phrase and emerging technology, and ensure might really entertains.
So to repeat what Giulio said, if you can't hear me, raise your hand. So I want to welcome everyone to TransVision 1980. What a great place this is. What a wonderful world we live in. It's an exciting time to be alive. Just think of the things that we will see in our lifetimes. Here we are, 1980, we're only 20 years away from the beginning of the next millennium. And you know, it was only 15 years ago, sorry, that Herbert Simon, a Nobel Prize winner and an AI pioneer, said that within 20 years, machines will be able to do every job that a human can do. Well, he said that 15 years ago. He said in 20 years. So that means we're only 5 years away from totally automated living, where we will be able just to do what we want to do and let the machines do the work. We'll have complete abundance in only 5 years. And look at this. Dr. Paul Segal at Berkeley, just a couple years ago, told us that by the 1990s, that's only 10 years away, by the 1990s, the human lifespan will be 400 years or more. That's exciting. What a time to be alive.
But Mike, remember, he's quite reserved now, so he might be right.
But that's right. It might be. Sort of like Jesus is always coming back to the next generation, right? And 5 years ago, Professor Gerald O'Neill issued his very complex and convincing proposals for human space colonies. He said that if we could get enough motivation, enough money and resources behind it, that given today's existing technology, before 1990, we could have an Island 1, the first space colony. In fact, you see an image over here of a space colony that he was describing. That with today's technology, 1980 technology, this could be done within 15 years. And that would hold 10,000 humans in a space colony. What an exciting time it is to be alive. We're just so close to all these things happening. The gerontologist Alex Comfort said just a couple years ago that aging could be conquered within a decade if we just mobilize the necessary resources. How exciting. What a great time to be alive. One last point here, Marvin Minsky, the great AI pioneer, said, this is a long time, this is 13 years ago. He said this in 1967. Within a generation, artificial intelligence, all the major problems will be solved. Wow. Can you imagine? We're just around the corner from these things. So I just can't wait. Can you imagine what it'll be like in 30 years, in 2010? After all this has happened, humans will be living 400 years. Machines will do all our labor for us. We'll have space colonies with 10,000 or more people in them, and human-level AI or even more. It's an amazing time for us to be alive. Let's just pretend for a minute. Let's pretend we could go 30 years into the future. What would it be like at, let's say, they still have TransVision conferences in 2010. Maybe they would hold it someplace exotic like Milano or something. So let's just pretend we're in 2010 in Milano. What has happened in the last 30 years? What have we seen that has really changed the world? Well, I'm going to put on my Karnak, that magnificent hat, and be able to see the future from 1980. And you know what I see? Here are the biggest things that have happened in that 30-year period from the 1980 to 2010. Well, the first one is, guess what? The Soviet Union, it no longer exists. The Soviet Union is gone. It fell apart. It imploded. Now you have Russia, you have a dozen other countries, and so that means that the Cold War has ended. There is no more U.S. versus USSR Cold War holding the whole rest of the world hostage. We no longer have that bipolar world, I like that phrase, the bipolar world of the West against the East. Today we have a world that is multipolar. It looked for a little while like the United States might be able to basically create a unipolar U.S. empire, but they sort of screwed up in a lot of ways. So now we have this multipolar world with emerging countries and powers coming from all over. What an interesting development. Another thing that happened is China. China 30 years ago, in 1980, was still kind of a backwards country with a lot of poverty, a huge underclass, and struggling economy. But you know what? They reorganized themselves. Since then, China has grown 10 times faster than the leading world economies. By 2010, China is poised to become the world's largest economy within just another couple of decades. It's an amazing change. But you know what you couldn't even see from 1980? There were all these other things people were predicting. Nobody could see that this goofy thing that was called the internet, that almost nobody knew about or used, would be transformed by the invention of something called the World Wide Web in Switzerland in 1991, and that the World Wide Web would create a new way of accessing all these computers that were hooked up through this internet. And the World Wide Web would then make it possible for us to convert a lot of commerce and interaction and something new called email, which is the way you send electronic mail instead of sending mail through the old postal system. Now you can do it through computers, fast, yeah, instant. It's amazing. And you have commerce happening online with online stores. Do you know what that means? There's actually places you can buy things on the computer. That's something we never saw in 1980. So this internet has really rocked the world by 2010. And we're on our way to moving towards a time when people will be able to be online all the time. That is, they carry these devices with them now that you can take pictures, you can make movies, you can send text messages, you can make phone calls anywhere in the world for pennies or even for free and talk to anyone anytime. You can go to websites. It's just unbelievable what you can do with this little device in the palm of your hand. Now people are even talking about being able to embed circuits in clothing or in eyeglasses that you wear, possibly even within our bodies, so that we can really be connected to that World Wide Web ourselves all the time. So it's an amazing time to be alive here in 2010. But it's not all good, unfortunately, because we've also seen in the last 30 years a big change, which is a huge increase in income inequality. That is, in a disparity of how much income goes to which income groups. And for many years leading up to 1980, that had shrunk to where the middle class was gaining a more significant proportion of the income, but that's been reversed since 1980. And unfortunately, we now have a much larger percentage of income going to the top 1%, and even larger proportion than that going to the top 0.1%. So that's raising some problems, and it's causing some inequality that we're concerned about in 2010. Another thing, unfortunately, that only a few people saw in 1980 is this thing called global warming. And if we had been able to pay more attention, actually take some action maybe 10, 20 years ago, it might not be so bad as it is now. But it's been really hard to convince everybody to do the right thing. And so global warming is a clear and present danger that doesn't seem to be going away. So those are the things that we've seen happen in the last 30 years. It's been a remarkable time to be alive as we're looking back to 1980 from 2010, all these things that have changed. But what were those other things we were talking about earlier? What didn't happen between 1980 and 2010? Well, I'm sorry to tell you, those L5 space colonies that we talked about, those are still a dream. There's a space station with 5 people on it. We're getting there, but it's taking a lot longer than we thought. And we don't yet have 400-year lifespans, but most people can live to be 80. And no human cloning, even though it might be possible, probably not, or maybe not for a while. Luckily, we have avoided what Paul Ehrlich called the population bomb. So that's one good thing that hasn't happened. And we don't yet have molecular nanotechnology with these dream machines that'll make anything you want. Maybe we will someday, but not happening as fast as we hoped. And artificial intelligence is still almost there, but not quite. What does this mean then? What does this mean that 30 years ago, all these predictions were made that didn't come true? Are those people stupid? Is that what happened? Was Marvin Minsky a dumbhead? You know, in 1932, Albert Einstein said he didn't see the remotest possibility of nuclear energy. He saw nuclear energy was impossible because it would mean the atom would have to be able to split at will. Einstein said it couldn't happen. Is he a dumbhead? Is he wrong? Is he stupid? Well, he's wrong, but he's not stupid. Now, it's not wrong to make bad predictions. You know, if you don't make any predictions, you won't make any bad predictions. So it's okay to be wrong. That's not a problem. The difficulty is in being certain and in projecting a certainty that causes problems in having proper influence. Because the fact may be that we just can't know enough to make those kinds of predictions that will be consistently reliable, and that we just can't see some of the things that are actually going to happen. We aren't good enough at foreseeing the future to be able to make always good predictions. Now, let's just imagine we're in 2040. And I'm saying, welcome to TransVision 2040. And we're going to have an exciting day of presentations here. Within 20 years, human lifespan's 95 years. Artificial intelligence is on the horizon now. We'll have in this century universal abundance. And the singularity, yes, singularity is still coming. Now, I really don't have a hard time imagining this, some of you in this room being at a conference somewhere in 2040 and seeing these talks. I hope that doesn't happen. It might not. It might be that all these things will take place then. But you know what? Those people back in 1980, they couldn't imagine going to 2010 and seeing a room of people sitting in chairs that aren't, virtual beings, and that still have to, sleep 8 hours a night and eat 3 meals a day, and they can't just take a pill for all of their nutrition. They don't live 400 years. A lot of people thought that would happen, but we're not there yet. Well, that doesn't mean we're stupid, though. Let's flip the page here, go back to 2010, and see maybe what we should do about this. We can say, sure, someday we might have designer babies, be able to give your child all the attributes you want. We might someday have those nanofactories that are being predicted. Friendly AI still seems like a possibility. All these things we might someday have. But what do we have today? What's actually happening in the present in 2010? Children are dying. Not just children, other people are dying. Every day, tens of thousands of people die. You know what? In the 10 minutes I've been talking, 1,000 people have died. And of those 1,000 people, 450 of them are children. Children die because they didn't have proper nutrition, because of poverty, because of diseases that are preventable. We have the technology to prevent these diseases today. These children don't have to die, but they did. In the last 10 minutes, 450 children died unnecessarily. This is the actual existential reality of where we are. This is the world we really live in today, where more than 1 billion of our brothers and sisters are living in dire poverty. And we can't come to a place like this. Too many suffer and die from preventable diseases. Huge numbers are oppressed and exploited by governments and corporations. And the rich, of course, keep getting richer by making and selling weapons of war. Another page of existential reality. We're still polluting the atmosphere and the oceans in a way that will irreversibly alter the biosphere and harm our civilization. You know, we're wiping out species 100 to 1,000 times faster than natural rates found in the fossil record. It's the next great die-off. We're in the middle of a mass extinction. We've caused that. Meanwhile, the rich keep getting richer by drilling for oil and building coal-fired power plants. Now, I posted these last 2 pages of information on my Facebook page recently, and in response, one of the comments that I
and getting rather horrified when they discover that when you look at the actual policy forecasts from experts, they're still very, very bad. I think we have increased forecasting accuracy in some domains. That seems to be fit with both Scott Armstrong's original studies and later studies. However, general domains, which are kind of open-ended, like an entirely new technology, we don't seem to be doing much better. However, when it's a kind of technology, how many base pairs are we going to be able to see good? There we seem to have become much better, mostly because we learn how to throw out bad methods.
Yeah, I think that one mistake could be that people disregard the societal factor. So if looking at why did something happen or not, may be interesting to look, did it fail due to technological scientific reason, the science technology turned out to be more complicated, or is it due to socio-economic reasons because people just did not get into it and didn't fund it? And this could then also yield better methods for forecasting because you can have one track. If you put all effort in, technologically this might be really reasonable, and the societal issue with which is far more problematic to predict.
Yeah, I like that point. I think that those of us who are so focused on technology and science, and we see the problems that have to be overcome in our domains and think, well, we can do that in 5 or 10 years, but sometimes fail to realize that we're living in a complex world, a big society where we have all sorts of politics and economics taking place that will influence how fast those things maybe not can be achieved, but can be disseminated into a larger society. So yeah, it's a lot easier to say we can do this one thing, but it's not so easy to say when we do this one thing, this will be the impact it will have. It's really hard to foresee that.
Excuse me, Stefano, maybe just let Mike finish his talk, because now we are fully online again, and you ask the question again.
I'm almost at the end.
Mike, maybe you could go back to the previous slide and to start from there.
To how far back?
Just one slide.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll go back.
Because I stopped you about 30 seconds after the Wi-Fi connection of Kim went down.
Okay, so you want me to review this? Yeah. All right. For those who missed this part of the presentation, what I was saying is that today in the existing world, we have a sort of mainstream thought about where the world is going, how technology and society are changing. And most of those people in the mainstream, if they've ever even heard of transhumanists, if they know anything about transhumanism, see transhumanists as being sort of over on the fringe. They've heard things like Ted Williams' head being stuck in a vat so that he can be reanimated someday. And if that's what they think of as transhumanism, then they may think that we're on the fringe. Now, that, as I say, is the public perception. That may not reflect reality, but what we have to deal with is what people think, because perception, from marketing terms, is reality. And what I suggest our goal should be is to work at influencing, as we can, influencing the mainstream to try to push them towards our direction, towards our way of thinking. But at the same time, we need to be more conscious about the public presentations that we're making as transhumanists to try to find a way to bridge that gap, to close it, and actually create an overlap between the mainstream and transhumanist thinkers that will create what I call a zone of policy influence, an area where we can see, okay, we have enough now common ground between the mainstream, the actual decision makers and people who make things happen, and those of us who want these new technologies to be developed. If we can reach that point where we have an overlap, then we can achieve what I call the zone of policy influence. And again, it's not that we have to. It's not that we have to give up our dreams. We don't have to abandon the things that we want, but we have to recognize that perception matters. What people think about us makes a difference. And what I really want to see is a world in which we can have both rapid progress in emerging technologies and that those emerging technologies will be developed to be safe, effective, and made widely available. Now, In order to do those things, so those two things, that takes engagement with the mainstream. As much as some of us might like to think we can do it on our own, we can, buy an island and create our own utopia, that's fine in storybook land, but that's not how the world works. And if we really want to achieve these two goals of rapid progress and safe, effective, and widely available emerging technologies, it's going to take engagement, it's going to take commitment from, if you will, the powers that be. We have to find a way to broaden how we appear to them and bring them closer to us so that we can reach this point of actually having significant, measurable, achievable policy influence. And that's the work that we're doing at the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies, where I work, and you're welcome to get in touch if you'd like to have your say or ask questions. And that concludes my presentation.
I think we have time for one question. We have three questions. Let's make 4 very fast questions and very fast answers.
Okay.
I'll do my best. So, I found your presentation very consistent to what I said yesterday. That is, my impression is that contrary to the expectations of an impending doom or rapture, actually the pace of change and of technological development, more specifically, is actually slowing rather than accelerating. But I'm also quite on your line with regard to the idea of socialization of the technology and access to technologies both at the social and at the international level. And I don't really understand why such substantial resources should be sequestered by groups which are not only small in numbers. I'm not just speaking I'm not really speaking here in an egalitarian sense, but also are perceived as contributing to the general welfare very dubiously. Marx used to call them parasitic classes. All that is okay to me. Where I am more reluctant to follow you is what I perceive as a strictly utilitarianist approach to technology, meaning that the reason why a number of the technologies which were expected to be developed were not is simply because nobody did it. That is, to predict the future, you need to make it happen. And unless a societal and a civilizational effort is deployed towards grand goals, such goals would not happen automatically at all. And in this respect, I wonder whether, in fact, technological development and changes have not ever been sustainable or say from a utilitarian point of view. For instance, we could save a number of children from preventing disease, to have technology to do that, which is a very good thing. And probably we should do. But such technology was developed exclusively because the utilitarian criteria were not applied when the technology was developed. Because at any given time in history, it would have been better in terms of saving life, say to feed people rather than to research antibiotics or manufacture them. And if we have such technologies, is because not just, say, personal or economic interest in the capitalist sense, but also, say, other motivating factors such as intellectual challenge or the quest for greatness, the self-overcoming as a societal value, which at least involved some part of society, led to developments where, say, the inventors or the scientists don't really care about the consequences of their discoveries or inventions, but they were looking for them just as a goal per se.
That's a short question, like
Or a comment on a question, but
I think I get your point and pretty much agree with you. So, next question.
It's also not really a question. 30 years ago, there were also doom predictions. For example, that the population is going to rise so much that we will not be able to feed the world, and that's not true also. But I think in your description of the last 30 years, you forgot something important. During the last 30 years, life expectancy was rising 10 years more or less. So it's really a big difference.
Yes.
And in the poorest countries, it was rising more than in the richer countries. It's really, so in this part, for this aspect, the differences between rich people and poor people are smaller. That's for me something very important.
Yeah, I think
and
that's
I
true.
want to come back to your slide about people dying and children dying. I think you said 1,000 people dying and 450 children. So I'm sorry, but that's totally not true. This year you will have more or less 60 million people dying and more or less 9 million children. So if you take in proportion, you have something like 150 children. So, well,
it may depend on where you get your statistics from.
No, I agree with you that it's very important, and that's for me. I'm since more than 20 years giving money and acting to make it possible for all children not to die anymore, but saying for that's saying that it is still a big part. That's still a big part, but it's small, and it's only something like 15%.
You know, your comment, let me just respond quickly. Your comment makes me think of a book, and I wish I could remember the name of the book, by an American writer named Giulio. Somebody remember the name of the book? Yeah, Radical Evolution. Thank you. And in that book, he says that he basically lays out three possible futures. Essentially, there's the gloom and doom on one side, and there's the paradise on the other side. And he says the far more likely place will end up is what we've always done. He calls it the muddle through scenario, that we will muddle through and think some things will get better and some things will get worse, and we'll have to deal with problems and have achievements, but essentially we'll be in the same place we are a little bit, probably, that we'll deal with our problems and we'll accomplish some things, and it will be neither a scenario of paradise achieved or a total descent to hell. Now, I hope he's right, because I don't want to hell, and I would rather go to paradise, but if it means muddling through in the meantime, then we should probably be glad that we can manage that. Aubrey?
Yeah, so I have an actual question. First of all, I want to mention that I think that the statistics on death are about right. 100 deaths total per minute. All causes with about 2/3 from aging and only about 1/6 from
Okay.
So actually the question that I asked me this morning, and I gave some sort of answer, but I had to with you would be the right person to ask the question to. The question was, why are futurist technologies hard to sell to the general public? And my answer was, well, I don't think there's only one answer. I think each of the futurist technologies that are prominent in this community have particular hurdles to overcome in selling them to the general public. So I don't know what you think.
I think I would probably say there are two reasons that futurist technologies are hard to sell to the general public. One reason would be that the general public can't always see the immediate benefit. When the average person is working two jobs, getting behind on the mortgage, having the kids, be kicked out of school, maybe not that dramatic, but people deal with real life problems constantly.
So in a word, short-termism.
Yeah, of course. And we've evolved to deal with short-term interests. The human psychology is not evolved to make long-range plans and so on. We all have read that before. So that's one problem, is that you really can't expect the public to necessarily support these. When Henry Ford invented or improved the assembly line so that he could mass produce and sell automobiles, people didn't necessarily want cars, but he created the demand. And that's one thing that a good marketer of new transhumanist technologies would do, is find ways to create demand by reaching people where they are, and not by sort of selling the pie in the sky. You can have a flying car that will take you to Jupiter someday. But the other point, I think, is in order to get funding, you have to prove that you can make money. And most of us in this room, I'm sure, are idealists and think we should do the right thing, damn it, because it's the right thing. But those who would fund those things are going to say, okay, how much profit am I going to make on it? And that's, again, that's just the way the world works. You can say it's wrong, but it's reality. A matter of what?
Be patient.
Okay, you want to comment?
New generation about the future, not about this today, about the future.
Yeah, and I think we're getting better, but it takes a lot longer to communicate those messages than we like to think it would be. How much more time do we have?
30 seconds.
30
Just
seconds.
have a remark.
All right. Go for it.
Like what Miriam said as well, I don't think that social problems are much more complicated than technological. I just give you an example. When you separate the problems, it's easy to solve it. You say, so many children are dying, you have to give them the medicine. Just a moment. You give the medicine, then they will have the food. They will have an industrial system. Okay, let's give them the industrial system. Let's industrialize Africa. Yeah, but then we have the global warming. I mean, all these problems are interacting with each other. Very hard to solve them. And so just a remark that probably you agree or not. I don't know.
Yeah, the world is more complex than
Exactly.
fantasy writers, science fiction writers would like to
Just a
believe.
quick one.
All right.
I very much appreciate the work the Institute for Ethics is doing. I would like to ask you, what do you think the role of art and aesthetics are concerning bridging the gap between the public engagement?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely could do a great job, particularly, I would say, television and movies. And there's some progress in television. You know, there are TV shows, Battlestar Galactica, that sort of thing. There's one now, I don't remember the name of it, but TV shows that are kind of bringing up transhumanist themes. Yeah, and they're doing it, what's the other one? Okay, yeah, Caprica, right, thank you. And that's a way, books obviously, but also movies. And we've never really seen, I don't think, good, because most of these movies about the future are always apocalyptic. Yeah, and you know, dystopic, right? And you have the machines coming and killing humans and so on. That doesn't really help. On the other hand, it appeals. It's mass entertainment. But I think a big part of that art that you're talking about has got to be in mass appeal mediums that get those points across. Yeah. We done?
Okay, thank you very much.
So I'd like to ask Kim if she can help putting all the cables back to the old computer. Thank you very much, Mike. Since I have 1 minute to fill before the computer is ready, I want to make an observation on Mike's presentation. And the fact that we have been discussing these things very frequently on the IET blog. And this is a discussion that, of course, will continue. Now, if you ask me, do you agree with what Mike just said, my answer is yes. I don't see any singularity coming in 2035. But that doesn't mean that the singularity may not come sooner or later. I do not see mind uploading developing the first half of the century. Is it much closer to the very end of the century? But it does not mean that mind uploading may not happen someday. And it does not mean that it is not a worth subject to pursue. Of course, in parallel with other things. I do also agree that there are many problems in today's world. And Mike mentioned the most important of them, which do deserve to have a higher priority than many of the things that we're discussing here today. But again, the fact that other things need to have a higher priority does not mean that very visionary science fiction art development like physical immortality or mind uploading are not themselves worthy of attention. All these things should be done. Can I end my comment to my thoughts now? Because I had to do it to a completely different angle.
Okay, thank you very much. Since I want to leave some time to the next two talks, I'm going to take only 7 or 8 minutes.
Basically, I want to explain you things about what you're seeing in the central screen right now. About what I call online conferences 2.0. What is the problem? A conference like what we're having here today, it costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of time. I must admit to being a bit disappointed by not seeing here today as many people as I hope to see. But I understand very well that many people were just not able to make the financial expense to come here, because you had a conference fee, then you had a flight ticket, then you had to take a cab to go to the airport, then you had to take another cab here, you had to buy a hotel, you had to buy food. That costs money, and it's an unfortunate fact that today we have a crisis, and we don't have as much disposable income as we were used to have only 2 years ago. So the problem is money, and the problem is time. About time, I want to mention that one of the speakers who was foreseen for today is not able to come physically, and will perhaps give a remote talk because he had a last-minute problem. I didn't get yet for him permission to mention what the problem was, but it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. For this good thing, I'd like to ask for an applause to David Stiles. So the bottom line is that it's difficult to organize a conference because people don't have money and people don't have time. I want to add one more thing that I hadn't thought of preparing this presentation. I have been really becoming almost mad with all the video cables and sound cables and the distance between microphone and loudspeakers. Also from a technical point of view. Organizing a conference can be difficult. What can the solution be? One possible solution is to have online conferences. Either some mixed reality thing with people physically present in one place and people watching from the internet, or online only events with what I like to call two ways interactive mixed reality. The people who are watching us online today are able to watch all the talks. They can ask questions to speakers. We didn't put them on sound today, but they can ask a question via game. In other implementation, they can directly talk to the speakers. And most important of all, they can participate independently of their geographical location. An online meeting is still not as immersive as a face-to-face meeting in the mid-space like we are having today. Of course, being physically present in one place is much better. It's still much better. Online meetings are mediated by technology, which causes some problems. For some people, technology is difficult to learn. And we have seen that a few minutes ago, when one of the two Wi-Fi connections that we are using stopped functioning, we had to stop my talk and restart the Wi-Fi connection. But online meetings have also advantage. For example, this specific technology that we are using now is almost as immersive as face-to-face, and it's much cheaper for both organizers and participants. People can participate anytime from anywhere. And the fact that you don't have to go somewhere else makes possible some alternative schemes and formula, like for example, instead of having a 3-day conference like this, we could be having a permanent conference all year with a talk every weekend. I'm not going to say too much to describe the Accelerate project. We have been running it for a few months. In fact, it was inaugurated by Anders in April this year. We've done online-only events and mixed reality events, for example, one in San Francisco in August. It's based on Teleplace, which is an instance of interactive and immersive telepresence technology integrated with the conferencing. And it's going to be open to subscribers starting now. As a matter of fact, all the people who have registered to attend TransVision online have received a 1-year membership in this program. We had a lot of interesting talks. At the beginning, only about transhuman themes, but we're going to expand the thematic coverage of our program to many other interesting things, but without forgetting our basic transhumanist focus. One of the last talks was last week, Max Hodak on brain-computer interfaces. Then we have here, I see that, I know that some people here are into the paleo diet, Max is one. I believe Stefano will be considering that. So we had a great talk by Michael Joseph on Paleolithic diet on occasion of the conference of the Immortality Institute in Brussels a few weeks ago. Martin gave a great talk about cybernetic mortality with a different focus, a slightly different focus from today's talk. All these talks are available online. The video files are online and everybody can watch them. Before we had Dan Gertler. Before we had Susanne Gilbert, who is also going to speak tonight. And before that, we had many other talks, including a very interesting Israeli extension of the advancing South Street Independence Mine in San Francisco in August. It was a satellite to Singularity Summit. This program was recently covered by Hypergrid Business, which is a specialist publication on this thing, with some word that I like very much to see. Saying that the final objective of our project is to become something like a bed, to become something like an online open bed using immersive presence technology to give everyone from everywhere the possibility to listen to interesting talks about ideas we're spreading. And another of the evolution that we envisage is for this to become a prototype of future next generation fully interactive television, where the audience can almost physically be there and interact with those running the presentation and with the guests. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to stop it. Did I take 7 or 8 minutes as I wanted to? I think I'm going to do just one question, if there is any question, before giving the floor to the next speakers. So since I think there is no question, I'd like next one is Emanuele Ratti. Do I have your PowerPoint?
No.
Okay, so let's take a 1 minute break to load your power. I want to use your computer.
Yes, my paper here.
Okay, so let's again, if I can ask you to help me to switch again from one computer to another. This talk is going to be in Italian.
No, in English.
Ah, that's good. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the next one.
Yes. Just one moment.
Question for you, Giulio. Will you forecast on when you'll have the first 100% virtual conference?
No, just
the next one is scheduled for November 20. But November 20 is going to be something very similar to the recent Transhumanist Speedy Clarity conference that the Modern Transhumanist Association had in Salt Lake City 2 weeks ago. But it's going to be online only. And the speakers will be myself, Lincoln Cannon, and the remote talk this afternoon, Mike Perio Valtor, another couple of speakers, and as a matter of fact, we have already invited all invited speakers but one. And I wanted to invite this speaker tonight, but since she's here, I'd like to ask Martin if she will be with us for the workshop on November 20, it's going to be an online-only workshop about transhumanism and spirituality issues.
Oh, sure.
Thank you very much. So that's going to be the next one.
Okay. Well, my name is Emanuele Ratti. I'm a candidate for an A Vice Search in Philosophy of Information the University of Hertfordshire. This is just a short talk. It's just a short talk about one of the possible identity of our movement, of transhumanism. So I'd like to start with the definition of transhumanism of Dr. Robin Hanson. That is, transhumanism is the idea that new technologies are likely to change the world so much in the next century that our descendants will in many ways no longer be human. So it is a definition of transhumanism that look at the future. But I think that the way in which we look at the future depends on our past. So for a new idea, because transhumanism introduced itself as a new idea, it is very important to understand the ideological derivation of transhumanism. And it is a very hard problem, because as you know, as Bostrom, Sandberg, or others said, transhumanism is a progressive idea. Progressivism is a very vast ideology. Its main idea is that it is possible to improve humankind through the main faculty of humankind itself, that is the reason with the big R. And it is a feature of enlightenment. And if transhumanism is a son of enlightenment, we can affirm that it is a modern ideology in the sense, the philosophical sense of the modern age. So, enlightenment, I say, is the father of transhumanism, and scientific revolution may be its mother. And I think that this second derivation is more important, because the very idea of transhumanism is that we can improve humankind with emerging technologies, the famous G and R revolution, genetics, nanotechnologies, robotics. We have all read the book of Good Slice and Disney about this problem. And so we can sum up with a statement of Dr. Sandberg. Transhumanism is the philosophy that we can and should develop at a higher level, both physically, mentally, and socially, using rational methods. So my question is, if transhumanism is the mission of development at a higher level using rational methods, where is the innovation of transhumanism? Because it seems to me that it is a very traditionalist idea in the world of scientists and philosophers. So, in my opinion, the very idea of transhumanism is the self-managed evolution. So, I'd like to read a quote from the book of Ricardo Campa, Treder. And it's written that it is possible to sum up the main idea of transhumanism with a slogan: it is possible and it is desirable to go beyond the stage of blind evolution, encouraging a self-managed evolution. We are ready to do what science nowadays makes possible, taking on our hands our destiny as species. We are ready to accept the results of biotechnologies, quality sciences, robotics, nanotechnologies, and artificial intelligence. And we want to analyze these outcomes from a political and philosophical point of view. So, I think that transhumanism makes explicit a particular ability of human beings. So that to live, we need to modify our environment to make up our biological legs. And thanks to the last emerging technologies, we are now in the situation, theoretically, that we are modifying radically our biology and ourselves, not just the environment, as we have done since as we have done for thousands of years. So the fact is that due to the increased quantity of improvement, all discoveries and innovation maybe one day will pass in quality improvement, where by quality I mean a change that causes a sort of visibility, a total difference between before and after some changes, some improvement. So I think this is very different and far from the American progressism, for example, of the 19th century, that advocated progressive modification but without a real revolution. So I think that according to this view, transhumanism is not very modern in the philosophical sense of this word. I think it is in depth more to humanism, considered as Campbell writes, wrote, evaluation of human interested dimension of existence. So I think that transhumanism as the spirit of the great navigators, of the great foundation, the spirit of the great civilization as, I don't know, ancient Rome or ancient Greece. So the idea of this talk is that transhumanism as an historical but accessory derivation from enlightenment, an important and necessary derivation from scientific revolution, and a spiritual affinity with a very ancient attitude that was reinterpreted by a famous philosopher in the second half of the 19th century. However, the founders of transhumanism, together with other important members of our movement, insist on the strict affinity with enlightenment and modernity. So my aim is to show how transhumanism risks to be weakened in its revolutionary purpose if reduced to a more modern affiliation. So I think that, as you know, transhumanism has many enemies, but I think that a great enemy is useful because, for example, according to Nietzsche, the enemy is a sort of friend because it lets me understand who I am. It shows me the way in which I have not to be. So one of the most important enemies, and in Italy is the greatest, of transhumanism is, of course, the Roman Catholic Church. I often wonder how it could be possible that a so reactionary institution that is against any form of progress, how it is possible that it is in the front line in topics as the development of science, emerging technologies. So someone could answer maybe because it has a high number of faithful people, of worshippers, but I think it is not the right answer. The fact is that Catholic Church is driven from its birth by a great managerial staff, and in a modern age, of course, with a hard and dark period, it became modern. Modern in two senses. The first is the one I'm going to explain now, and the second will be clear at the end. So, in other words, the Catholic Church was able to adapt to a new environment. There were times in which it forbid autopsies, but nowadays there's many great labs. And there are also Catholic labs without the traditional Catholic limits in ethics. And we have an example here in Milan, the Sarapelli University. And so Catholic Church nowadays carries its philosophia perennis beyond any other ideology in the chaotic transition between the second and the third millennium, with many worshippers, scientists, and philosophers. Very, very great to keep. And I think we have many problems because there is so much flexibility that someone considers the possibility of a bridge between transhumanism and Catholicism. As 1,000 years ago, someone had considered the possibility of a bridge between Christianity and Greek culture. So the modern identity of Catholic Church let us understand how transhumanism must not be if we want to develop its revolutionary power and potential. And so, for the purpose of this talk, I needed to introduce, just introduce because it is a very hard topic, some researches of the great French philosopher Michel Foucault, and well deepened by an Italian philosopher, Roberto Esposito, maybe someone know him. And In this short excursus, I will use the word politics, not in the Anglo-Saxon meaning as parties, dynamics, but with politics I mean the way in which livings are and live, behave. And it is the use of the word politics taken from Nietzsche. This is not a strange meaning because common sense considers it. In our society, we are going towards, in Italy, we are going towards a total absence of political consciousness. But there are certain categories, such as the fascist, the communist, the democrat, that refer automatically to a particular way of being, behave, and live. So I think it is a useful meaning of the word politics. So, according to Esposito, the essence of politics in the modern age is the so-called conservatio vitae, that is the preserving of life, the preservation of life. According to Foucault, biohistory is the crossing of dynamics of life and history, and refers to their interferences, their revenge, discord, each other. And with biopolitics means, literally, what let enter life and its dynamics in explicit estimate. Biopolitics uses power and knowledge as a means of transformation of human life. So, life and politics, for Foucault, fight without any solution. There is not a winner in the war between politics and life. And, for example, according to Esposito, the struggle between life and politics has a particular feature in the modern age. It talks about paradigma immunitario, that I'd like to translate as immunity paradigm. In the modern age, political power has the duty of preserving life. So, conservatio vitae. But someone could ask why the immunity paradigm should be novel. Did the political power in the ancient age consider the conservatio vitae, the preservation of life, as a problem? Of course they did, but for example, in ancient Rome, human life was considered only as a community, or only as community life. In the modern age, human life is only the individual life, the life of the single person. And for example, according to Hobbes, life anytime risks self-destruction if it is left to its natural way. So if the individual wants to preserve his life, and it is a paradox, he has to deny his life. Because I mean that life needs to renounce to its will of ownership, of possession on anything, and its will of development just to preserve itself. So I think that freedom in the modern age is the renounce to its own willpower, just to let an higher order, that is the society, to preserve the individual life from the risk of life itself. In fact, Hobbes, I think, is more the philosopher of peace than the philosopher of war. And in the modern age, so the modern individual gives himself up to any master just to preserve his life. There is an example. Last week, I followed a seminar at the University of Hertfordshire taken, and the narrator was Tom Sorrell, that is a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Birmingham. And he's the chief of a team that works on the law to fight terrorism, and the law about counter-terrorism. And the title of the seminar was Privacy, Surveillance, and Counter-Terrorism. So the idea of Sorrell is that for the sake of the individual person, we need to, I don't know, we need to deny his privacy to let the society to save people from terrorism. So a student asked, but why I have to deny my freedom to save my life and to save my freedom? And Sorrell answered that this is the essence of libertarianism. And if you live in UK, you have to accept it. So it is a paradox, but it is the essence of libertarianism. So the politics in the modern age could aim to become progressist but he has no mean to become revolutionary. Modern politics will build a better school, hospitals, but according to its nature, it must stop any attempt to an excessive straightening. So, the slogan of the modern age could be create a new model. Political powers must preserve life, but they cannot let it to be more than it is now. So political power could enhance some feature of life, but no more. So we have a paradox that progressism is a sort of is a conservative. So the question is, how transhumanism derives from progressism? Progressism explained in this way. Because transhumanism is a revolutionary movement in its proposal, saying modern age is ending with the foot of the end of history. We know the books of Fukuyama. Humanity cannot change. It is as we once see, and is for all. Transhumanism is in the opposite side. The dream of the modern age is landing in an era of peace, and transhumanism thinks that the human attitude cannot stop to question itself, so we are totally different points. In its aim, modern age is will of reduction. Maybe transhumanism is will of power, but of course will of power is an expression quite strange. What is will of power? Maybe does it mean that life wants power, or that power develops biological life? Of course, neither of them. I think that will of power means that life does not know any way of being except for a continuous development. Of course, will of power needs the preservation of life, because life needs to start. However, the preservation of life is just the beginning, and sometimes there is the necessity of its sacrifice, because I think that development and power have to subordinate everything. So, as I said above, Catholic Church became modern, not only from a technological point of view, but also modern, as I explained. Consider that Catholics, left-wing intellectuals, right-wing conservatives, often agree in important topics as artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, biotechnology, GM, and so on. So there is a sort of a conservative spirit from left to right. Okay, someone could say, yeah, the premise of left and right wing are totally different. But I tend not to give much importance to premises, because they become something conventional without any importance in a cultural world that is the same from left to right. So our movement, I think, that runs many risks. Consider, for example, one of the most important topics of transhumanism is longevism. I think that in the near future, Catholic Church will take possession of this topic. Because if you consider that Catholic doctrines makes a very, very huge jump from a total despise of life to a maniacal attachment to it. There are many press and cultural campaigns, for example, against euthanasia. The idea is that, of course, life belongs to God, so you must not end it by your will. And there is something strange with it, because a life that is kept alive by machines, I don't know if it's the will of God. But of course, Catholics are not interested in this contradiction. They just become more and more maniacal in this sense. So I think that longevism, despite nowadays is condemned by priests, could become one of the most important topics in the future. So I think that we must pay attention to insist on this sensational and quite messianic dance, because I think that transhumanism needs to think better about self-managed evolution and will of power. I think that we need to make more explicit this concept to make, as Robin Hensel said, our descendant in many ways no longer human. Thank you.
I would like to help myself with a microphone because
because I have a bad throat today, so I need to ask a question. I would like to make clear why I think it's very important the intervention by this young student, Emanuele Ratti, because I'm also very interested in the cultural roots of transhumanism and made much research, historical research on this topic. I publish articles, and I came to the conclusion that maybe this is an oversimplification, but I see two transhumanism, basically, and two different roots. One transhumanism is like of the great transhumanism. So the main idea is like, let's change our bodies, let's solve problems by ourselves. The other approach is the one by Ray Kurzweil, which is a little bit different. It's like, there's no God around, so let's build God. It's like, let's build the super intelligence that will solve our problems. It's like, let's build the nanny that will take care of us. While on the other, I know I'm oversimplifying the problem, but I see two different cultural roots here. We are not always conscious of this. Mine is just my hypothesis now. Maybe Over the Great doesn't agree with this, I don't know. But I think this is a pagan approach coming from Greek Roman. If you read Plato, you read Aristotle, you read the Romans, it's like building our bodies, change the problem, solving the problem by ourselves, not just asking the man to solve the problems. While the other cultural root is, we can call it Judeo-Christian. It's like either God solve our problems, if God is not there, because now through secularization, not many people believe in God, because Marx, Nietzsche, and Sartre, and many others
mystified it. They mystified it.
Yeah, they mystified it. Then, well, let's build an enemy. I don't know if I interpret correctly what you want to say, but I wanted to connect your presentation to existing people. One of these persons is here, and I would like to ask you also what your opinion about this. You can ask questions.
So one interesting take on this kind of conservative alliance between left and right is the writings of Virginia Postro. So her explanation is that there is a kind of alliance of stasis, people who like to control or limit the future. And the main reason is that they're either reactionary, they think the future will be bad, or the technocratic, to think that the future will be bad unless somebody, usually themselves, step in and organize it in the right way. And opposed to that is the dynamist view that says, well, the future is something that's going to be created. It's something we need a lot of trial and error. We actually don't know enough to define the future. The paradoxical thing, however, is of course that although transhumanism tends to be on the dynamist side, it's not always there. So there is elements within transhumanism that quite often are very technocratic.
Volevo chiedere a Emanuele se si è capito il commento, ma non ho capito poi qual era in realtà la domanda.
The problem is that his English is not very good.
I'm trying to improve it.
The core of the question. I may translate it to tell me very quickly the core of the question. Is like.
Well, Postrel's idea about that we have the stasis, they're either reactionary or technocrats, while the dynamists think of an open future that we should try. And transhumanists are generally famous at the dynamists, but there are quite a bit of technocratic transhumanism.
Hai capito? Lui dice che vede anche due tipi di transumanismo, nel senso uno è tecnocratico, nel senso di dirigere l'evoluzione in un certo modo, l'altro è più spontaneistico. C'è anche una sorta di contraddizione perché, per esempio, Nietzsche da un lato è, come dire, the will to power è spontaneistico, però come fai a guidarlo diventa anche tecnocratico. Capisci il problema? Cioè è un po' complicata la questione. Dove finisce, dove inizia il will?
No, I think that well, it is a very hard topic, and in fact, honestly, I don't have an answer. I'm sorry, but I think that Nietzsche, for example, is not totally spontaneist, I think, because it talks about, for example, a sort of sort of control that you need to have over your spirit and over the world of nature, over the environment. Yes. Yes. In fact, I don't have an answer to your question. I mean, I needed to think better about it.
Okay. One question?
In my opinion, one of the very important left-right questions will be with technological progresses, we will have a lot of possibilities, and one of the categories is human enhancement. And one of the categories of human enhancement is prolongation, a longer life. So one of the big political questions is, do we want this to be for everybody, or do we want this to be only for the people who want it, or even only for the happy few, I would say. I just finish. The question is, do you want to have it only for the people who want it, or to have it for everybody? For me, it's a complicated question, and I would like to have your opinion about it. So, do we have to convince everybody to go?
No, of course not.
Of course.
For example, in the book of Ricardo, I think it is clear at this point that this remark that transhumanism and all the human aspect related to it for people who want it. If someone like to live in a different way, there's no problem, I think.
Well, you know, until 1 or 2 centuries ago, a big part of the population was unable to read, and we decided that this human enhancement is more or less an obligation. So
okay. Now I understand. Well, in fact, it's another topic that I don't have an answer. So for myself, I think that it's important that people have the chance to choose if you want certain human enhancement or not. But I think that the social dimension and the political dimension of the topic is really hard to discuss here.
So, personally, I think that after all, non-Judaism itself is a mean to an end, meaning that it has to do with self-determination. And we already have some degree of self-determination with regard to our lives, meaning that we can stop them with the suicide. But we have a lifespan to make this choice, which cannot be longer than, say, 90, 100 years anyway. So having a lengthier life does not mean, say, to compel people to live for a longer time if they don't wish to do so, but simply to expand the range of their choice. But I think that while compelling people to have a longer life is out of the question in my view, and the idea of longevism goes hand in hand with euthanasia and self-determination with respect to the destiny of one's body, I also think that it would be naive to exclude, in principle, that there might be even there some degree of competition for scarce resources. Here, I'm not on the line of marketism, according to which one would be surprised that people who don't have money to pay for longevist therapies are not happy about that. Why should they complain? They are not in a position to pay, so they should be happy, and this is the nature of things. I'm not on this line at all, but I think at the same time that we should accept perhaps that it might be normal that people can be expected to struggle for access to longevist therapies as they already do for anything which has a value for them. And they may be doing that, say, at an individual level, and also, say, at a collective level, both, again, in a social and international sense.
Okay, thank you very much.